Frank J. Avella with The Contending. Bookends, a sweet and affectionate queer theme film written and starring Noam Ash, is world premiering at the Santa Barbara Film Festival. I'm happy to have Noam here today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Noam, tell me, are you excited about seeing the film with a festival audience?
Oh my God. Yes, so excited. There's something so special about seeing a film in a theater, period. And film festival audiences are just the most supportive and they're so excited. They love the art form. Yeah, really, really excited.
I wanted to ask you, th this ever-changing landscape of storytelling, you got your start basically with a web series,
Hmm.
and now here you are with your first major film.
Hmm.
Do you feel that film is still as important as we hope it is?
I think so. I think absolutely. I think the modes in which people consume stories are always and constantly changing, but stories themselves remain as important as ever. And I think film is one of the most universal forms of storytelling that it just connects with audiences in a way that very few other things do.
Absolutely. Tell me about the genesis of this film and just how autobiographical is it?
Yeah. So, the film is based on the year that I lived with my grandparents. So it draws from a lot of my personal experiences and reflects a lot of the lessons that I learned from my grandparents. So in that sense, it's very autobiographical, but it is by no means a documentary. It is not, you know, true to life in the sense of that the events in the film are exactly as they happened. But more so, it's inspired by this very special year that I got to spend living with my grandparents when when I initially moved in with them after a bad breakup and thought it was the most embarrassing and horrible thing to happen to me that I had to move in with my grandparents, only to turn into one of the best years of my life. So,
That's incredible. Well, one of the things I loved so much about this film is how it shows when children, in this case grandchildren, become the parents. I had older parents and I had
mhm.
to care for both of them.
Yeah.
So I can really relate to how that dynamic changes.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the big sort of themes in the movie is what sort of happens as one generation goes from being taken care of to becoming the caretakers. And it's a very painful transition, on both sides. Um, Miriam in the film, played by the brilliant Caroline
The
Aaron,
brilliant Caroline Aaron.
just an absolutely sensational performance. And she really grapples, there's a lot of pride there of not willing to recognize that, her husband, played by the incredible F. Murray Abraham, uh, might need some help, let alone allowing their grandson to provide that help. And it's also a very sobering experience for a young person who's used to seeing these two titans as pillars of his life, as people who are always so dependably there, and present, to all of a sudden recognize that maybe they're not going to be there forever. And there's going to come a time when he needs to be the one to step up and take care of them and not just always be the one who's taken care of.
Yeah, and the importance of getting to know them. That's one of the other things,
Yeah.
to before it's too late, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people, or I don't want to speak for other people, at least for myself, there's sometimes a sense that you're like, your grandparents were always old, that they just came into the world as fully formed people. And then when he starts talking to them about their youth, all of a sudden realizing that they're just like super adult children, that they have all of their experiences and all of their childhood. And the film really is a love letter to my grandparents, but also to that entire generation who has seen such changes in the world. I mean, I remember my grandmother telling me that when she was a little girl in Boston, milk was delivered by horse and carriage to
No.
their house. And, and I remember hearing that, it would just be like, what? They had an ice box. And then this is the same person that I am then FaceTiming with and being like, oh my God, you can't figure out the technology. And she's like, oh, hold on a second. Like the things that they have seen in their lifetime are just so extraordinary. Um, and there's so much that we can learn from them.
Yeah, absolutely. So take me through the journey from writing the script to how you got it into the right hands to actually getting it made.
Ooh, yeah. Every indie film is a miracle. It really is a miracle. It is by far the most rewarding but also difficult thing I've ever done. I first wrote the script. It was part of the Jewish Writers Institute, and they were receiving applications to develop material that dealt in some way, shape, or form with Jewish identity. And so I pitched this comedy because despite dealing with a lot of heavy topics, it is a comedy. It's a very life-affirming movie, and um, and I was very lucky to be accepted. And so I spent about a year developing the script in the program. Um, and then after that, I brought it to my good friend Alon Struzman, who is the CEO of 5X Media, and he had actually bought the first TV pilot that I ever wrote. And so I was like, "Hey, I wrote this thing. Are you interested?" And he read the script and he loved it. And then we all just started working together, and it was just one foot in front of the other, and just
So what was the time frame between get starting to generate interest to actually, get having the financing to make the film?
yeah, things happen like very slowly and then all at once. And that was at least my experience. There would be like these periods of a few weeks and months where we were just like trying to get to the next stage. And then, we have a fantastic casting director, producer on the film, Henry Russell Bergstein. And he was like, who is your, dream casting? I was like, well, I would really love F. Murray Abraham to play my grandfather. And he was like, okay, we're starting right at the top, aren't we? And I was like, yep, yep. He was like, okay, well, we'll reach out to him, we'll send him the script, but be prepared. Sometimes it takes months for people to read, especially people of his stature, and most often the answer is no. And I was like, okay, let's try. And we sent it, and 3 days later, he had read it and was like, I love this script. I'm in. And then things turbocharged because he was doing Queen of Versailles on Broadway. And
Ah,
so we had a very limited window in which to shoot. And so then it was like, okay, all steam ahead. And so it happened very slowly and then all at once.
wow. And we're okay, so were you always attached?
Yes.
Okay, so it was always like, okay, me or we don't make this movie.
Yeah. I mean, you know, so I'm a writer and an actor, and sometimes I write things. I had a show that I sold a couple years ago that I was not attached to star in because I didn't think I was the right person for that particular role for what I had written. But when it's something that is so personal, I was like, there's nobody better to do it. So
Well, also it was the right hat to wear because I'm always, I watch a lot of films and sometimes wearing the three hats does not work. So the fact that you
right.
had Mike Doyle come in to
Yeah.
direct, I think was really smart.
Yeah, I was very adamant about that. I did not want to direct this film. Well, first of all, one of my favorite things about filmmaking is how collaborative it is. And, when you write, you always imagine in your brain, you have a vision of what the film is going to be. And the film that I imagined when I wrote it was very different from the film that we ultimately made, which is 1,000 times better than anything I could have imagined. And that's really to credit Mike for bringing his sensibility and putting his stamp on the movie. Um, and so I find that I can do a lot of things, but only one thing at a time. So I can write it, and I loved that process. And then I had the most fun, you know, acting in it and just surrendering control to Mike to make the film that he wanted to make. Um, but directing it at the same time, I think would be very, very tricky for me. I think it'd be challenging to be completely present in the moment, but also have to have that, bird's eye view of everything that's going on. So
Oh
yeah,
yeah, and have it completely take over your life.
yeah, it's there are people that can do it, and God bless them. But for me, finding Mike was a huge, huge blessing, and we work so well together. And I really wanted him to have ownership over the film, and so we worked a lot, obviously before shooting, but then especially as soon as we got to set, it was his film, it was his set, it was his set to run,
Were you
his
okay
movie
with
to direct.
were you okay with tweaking dialogue, or did that not happen? Was it the script verbatim?
Um, no, I mean, people always ad lib a tiny, tiny bit, like little words change. But we pretty much stuck to the script. There wasn't any improv in the movie. It was all pretty much scripted.
I want to ask about Caroline because you guys have such great chemistry together, and
Yeah.
she is so incredible. And I feel like she's finally getting her due. You know, she had some great
Yeah.
roles in Woody Allen films and other things, and but I feel like at her age now, she's sort of, finally being celebrated for how great she is. Can you speak a little bit about working with her?
Caroline Aaron is a national treasure. I mean, she is so incredible in this film. I'm so excited for everyone to get to see her work. Um, it just working with her is a masterclass. Watching how she prepares, she is always in the script. We would be working and I'd be wearing a shirt. She's like, "Oh, that's the shirt I got you for your birthday." Like she's constantly inventing, more and more details for the world that to really inhabit it. And she is just the most generous actor, so loving. Both Murray and Caroline, as soon, we shot the film in Georgia. And so it was like adult summer camp because we were down there and, we were in hotel rooms right next to each other. And when you film in LA or New York, you go home at the end of the day and then, you go out to dinner with your family, with your friends, when you're on location, we didn't know anyone.
Mm.
And so we were just together all the time. It would be like breakfast, and then we go to set. It's like, want to do lunch? Yeah, there's no one else to have lunch with. Let's have lunch. You want to do dinner? And so we were just together all the time. Um, and it was an incredible bonding experience. And I think the chemistry that you speak to is just really genuine. We just all fell in love with each other.
Well, that's incredible and rare, by the way. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
I want to ask about the importance of telling queer stories,
Mm.
especially during these scary times. Can you speak
Hmm.
to your feelings about it?
Yeah, I think, well, let's start with the positive. I think that what we're seeing right now, especially with the success of Heated Rivalry, is that people relate to genuine, human, authentic stories, regardless of genre. And I think that's so important to all the players that be to really see that and see that people just want to watch human, authentic, moving stories, whether they're queer stories or straight stories. Um, and with our film, a lot of times people would ask me, they're like, "Wait, is this a coming of age film? Is this a a film about end of life issues? Is this a Jewish film? Is this a queer film? And the answer is yes. It's all of those things because life isn't siloed by genre. It's everything happens at the same time. And so the film really celebrates this sort of beautiful messiness of life and the family ties that really get us through it.
Absolutely. And it also, there's the scene with Saul. Saul is having memory issues, and there's the
Mhm.
idea brought up that he might not be as comfortable with Nate being gay as Nate thought. And I think I really appreciated that because, I recently had a friend slip something in like, well, God loves the sinner. And I thought to myself, oh, shit.
Ooh,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah. So I think
That's,
it's good to put that out there that, there's still that feeling.
well, that particular scene it was actually the first scene that Murray and I shot together. And I remember Murray came in to say, I was like, ooh, this scene's a motherfucker. He was like, this is, wow, here we go. And I mean, it was an incredible experience to film. But I think what was so important to me about that scene is that we often talk about and how rightfully, parents always have to accept their children for who they are and how important that is. But then there's also something that happens when people get older, where this was also part of Nate's transition into growing up, is that there's no way for him to know if his grandfather had in the past some sort of relic of homophobia that he had suppressed, or if something just kind of like went haywire, as it sometimes does. Um, but now it's Nate's turn to accept his grandfather unconditionally because his grandfather, whatever his initial programming may have been, whether it was a glitch that came in later, his grandfather always chose to support him 100% and always love him unconditionally. And so now he's getting old and there's a sort of slip up that happens or some kind of bug and there's no way for Nate to really know the root of that and he has to decide that ultimately it doesn't matter that he has to love his grandfather unconditionally just like his grandfather has loved him unconditionally his entire life.
See, I love that because we're living in a time where we're drawing lines in the sand
Yeah,
too often.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that was also so in the course of developing this film, we spoke to Rabbi Wolpe, and he was talking about what makes a story Jewish. And one of the things that came up is that Jewish stories tend to not have endings, which I thought was so profound because it's about the continuation of life.
Mm.
And so, with this particular question, and of course, spoiler alert towards the end of the film, there's a lot of stuff that is left unanswered. You don't know what Saul originally thought because it's not possible to know. And you don't know if Nate and Dr. Green are gonna, it seems like they might figure out a way to be together, but again, you don't know. In the book, you don't know if and that's okay because what the love between Nate and his grandparents gives us is the understanding that he's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I,
so will they.
and you leave the audience to do their work.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Best films
Exactly.
do. Yeah. Let me ask you, are you working on anything right now? Like, what's coming up?
Yeah, so I have a series that I wrote. It's very different. It's a very sexy series about sexual surrogacy that we are out shopping right now. And I'm also working on my next feature, which is also very different. It's an action comedy. Yeah, but a gay
Nice.
action comedy because It's
because we
fun.
don't have enough of those actually.
Exactly, exactly. I just started writing it and kept laughing, and I was like, "Oh, that would be fun." And so I just kept going, and I'm really excited about how it's turning out.
I want to end with asking you who your heroes have been growing up, are your artistic heroes, your inspirations.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, but I gotta say that the people whose careers I really, really admire are people like Phoebe Waller-Bridge and Michaela Cole, um, Brett Goldstein, the people who are writing and creating and starring and sometimes not starring, and sometimes they're behind the scenes, just people who are in, immersed in all aspects of the creative process. I just find that so incredibly inspiring and seek to emulate that.
Well, Brett Goldstein is a phenom, isn't he? He's so fucking
Oh my God.
amazing.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. I mean, he's doing stand up and then he's writing and then he's in, another, he was also, um, I believe I'm getting this right, but I think he was first a writer on Ted Lasso and then he was like, I think I could play this role. And, so I love people who are expressing their creativity throughout so many different facets and mediums. And that's what I strive to do. So I really look up to them.
Well, Noam, I wish you lots of broken legs with the festival coming
Thank
up
you.
and
Thank you so much.
hopefully a release soon.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Frank. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.